Marinaro, the Sick Podcast. Thanks for being with me on this Tuesday night and watching on YouTube, on Facebook, and on Twitter. We're talking Montreal Canadiens hockey. And yes, we're also going to talk about the Olympics. I think we're going to talk about the Olympics tomorrow, okay? But I will tell you that the women's game didn't go too good for Team Canada today. But the men are going to be in action on Thursday, on Friday, and then on Sunday, and then on their way to the quarters, the semis, and hopefully the final. All right, so we'll talk about the Montreal Canadiens. What are we going to talk about the Montreal Canadiens? We're going to talk about Patrik Laine, of course. Why are we going to talk about Patrik Laine? Well, for a couple of reasons. A, I'll tell you where he was spotted earlier today, who he was with, where he was going. I'll tell you a little bit of that. But more importantly, Pierre LeBrun of TSN and of The Athletic says that when it comes to Patrik Laine, everything is on the table. Everything. What does everything mean? Does he stay or does he go? Who has he played with and who will he play with? And if he goes, where is he going? And if he goes, should they wait a little bit longer? Have they basically, have they done everything they needed to do with Patrik Laine? Have they checked all the boxes? I don't know that they have. And we're going to show you who he's played with, who he hasn't. We're going to show you who it's worked with, who it hasn't, where it can work, who it can work with. We're going to do all of that. Who am I going to do it with? Jack Han. Jack Han, former assistant coach with the Toronto Marlies of the American Hockey League and development coach in the Toronto Maple Leafs organization. Jack is a regular collaborator on my show in French on Tuesdays and Thursdays, my show that goes weekdays, of course, at 10 a.m. And Jack joins me tonight. He makes his Sick Podcast in English debut. Stay with us. If you don't know this guy, he's going to blow you away. He's that good. He's coming up. He's Jack Han. I'm Marinaro.
It's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came in to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick Podcast, your #1 sports destination.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came in to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K, it's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K, 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 S-I-C-K,
All in, we came in to win.
up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. With Tony Marinaro.
55 seconds left in the penalty, a minute and 27 seconds left in regulation time. Boston 4, Montreal 3. Lafleur coming out rather gingerly on the right side. He gives it into Lemaire, back to Lafleur. Oh!
The sickest Montreal Canadiens podcast.
You're in the ball!
Sports entertainment like no other.
Rejoint, on lui fait perdre la rondelle, une passe devant. Et c'est le dégagement, et ce sera la victoire des Canadiens. Stanley pour les Canadiens, le 23e de l'histoire.
You found the dogs! John, you found the dogs! He found the dogs! And all together, they worked a young team to the top. And now, a 24th Stanley Cup banner will hang from the rafters of the famous Forum in Montreal. The Canadiens win the Stanley Cup!
Brought to you by Energy Transportation Group. Driven to be different. Bittt. Embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination. It's gonna be sick.
Marinaro, thanks for watching, everyone. Jack Han is my collaborator tonight. He makes his debut on the Sick Podcast in English. He's no stranger to the podcast, however, because he's a regular collaborator on my show en français du lundi au vendredi à 10h le matin. Jack est là tous les mardis et tous les jeudis vers 11h ou 11h30 d'habitude. Jack couldn't be there earlier today because of a previous engagement. I said, Jack, you know what? You're not going to be on my French show today, but I'm going to put you on my English show. How would you like that? He accepted the invitation. I'm happy that he did. Jack, how are you?
Jack Hen.
Yeah, and Jack Han is usually sponsored, I have to tell you, by Souvlaki Authentique on my show en français. So I can tell you that Souvlaki Authentique, I can tell you that they have several locations. They have one in Lachine. They have one in Pierrefonds. Montreal knows good food, but nothing hits like Souvlaki Authentique. It's comfort food, Greek style, family run, flavor packed, and proud to serve Montreal. Go to souvlakiauthentique.com to find your nearest location and bring the taste of Greece home. They have these potatoes with this unique lemon sauce that's absolutely unbelievable. I know I dropped by. My buddy Phil, as a matter of fact, ordered on the weekend. He went to pick up in Lachine. We had our Christmas party on the location on the West Island, and the grilled octopus, amazing. Jack has been at our office in Ville Saint Laurent, and we had some food catered to us from Souvlaki Authentique before. The pitas, the pork, the chicken. It's high quality. It's a great place, and we thank them for sponsoring Jack Han. Jack, how are you?
Super. Listen, Tony, I was a little bit scared when you introduced me because for the folks who don't know me, they might have logged off because they think I'm a Toronto guy, but I'm actually a Montreal guy. Grew up here, play my hockey here, moved away for work 3 times, came back 3 times. So, happy to talk some Habs tonight.
I still want you to talk a little bit more about yourself. Once again, I introduced you. You said a little bit about yourself here. But once again, you said you grew up in Montreal. You still live here in Montreal, which is cool. How did the opportunity come about for you to get into coaching and end up joining the Toronto Maple Leafs organization? And when did you work with them?
So again, I grew up playing hockey in Montreal at a variety of places. Started coaching high school hockey when I was 18. So I got an early start on that side of the game. Didn't really think about working in hockey full time. Went to McGill University, got my degree there in commerce. And then about 10 years ago, I had an opportunity to work for the Habs actually in social media and web content. So I did that for a season, got to travel with the team, which was a really cool experience. And that kind of made me realize that, I really could make it as a coach or on the hockey ops side of things. So I kind of invested all of my energy into that. Worked 3 years with the McGill women's hockey program. Was able to work with some really great players, some Olympians in that program. And then in 2017, Kyle Dubas, who was the GM in Toronto at the time, reached out with a player development position that was very sort of video and stats heavy, which was sort of my expertise at that moment. So I spent 3 years in the Toronto Maple Leafs organization, worked with a lot of their prospects, ended up spending my final season there as the assistant coach with the Toronto Marlies in the AHL. So I got to know a lot of the Laval players because of playing against them. Since then, during the pandemic, we moved back to Montreal, started a family, bought a house. I've been fortunate to work a lot with European pro teams. So when we get to the Olympics part of our conversation, I would have worked with many of those players as well. So right now, as more of a freelancer or a consultant, I get to stay at home, raise our 3-year-old, do some media, do a lot of things sort of on my own time, which has been fantastic.
You still help develop players.
Yeah. So actually during COVID, when we moved back to Montreal, some of the parents who know me from whether it's Twitter or my online newsletter, they reached out because their kids who were playing Bantam, they were going into Bantam at that moment, Bantam AAA. They lost the entire season because of the lockdown. So we started skating together, in groups of 4, 5, 6, and now 5 years later, half of those kids are playing major junior hockey. Some of them are NHL draft picks. Others are headed to NCAA. So, I've worked with players from in all age groups, male and female, and it's just it's such a blessing to be able to work with people and work in hockey. So that's kind of it about me right now.
You worked with Kyle Dubas.
Yep.
Who else did you work with? Who were some of the coaches you work with? I would imagine you work with Sheldon Keefe.
Yeah, so when I got to Toronto, got to work a little bit with Mike Babcock, who was the head coach of the Leafs back then. Worked a lot with Sheldon Keefe, whether it's with the Marlies or with the Leafs. And then over in Europe, had a chance to work with some coaches there as well. So, if you really want to know about what goes on inside the coach's room, or the process, the thought process behind how lineups are made or tactics are being decided on, ask me, because I'll be happy to share.
Well, what I'm going to ask you is, if you were coaching the Montreal Canadiens, and Marty St. Louis, I think, is doing a real fine job. Yesterday, we talked about the fact that it was his 4-year anniversary of his hired back on the 9th of February, 2022. Would you find a spot for Patrik Laine on your team? He's much talked about. Pierre LeBrun says all options are on the table right now for Patrik Laine. Does he stay or does he go? In the meantime, what I can tell you, and I broke this morning earlier on En Français, and I don't like doing this, but for whatever reason, it's become kind of like the style in Montreal when members of the media, they start showing pictures of all the players, of where they're going and this and that. I've done it before, I think, actually, I have to say. But, who crossed paths with who at the airport. And we know that Cole Caulfield and Arbor Jacki and some others are in Albany, Bahamas, which is a beautiful spot, by the way, based on what I hear, because my friend has a place down there. Dobish and Veleno are vacationing together. Other players are on their way to Ivan Demidov was in Florida last week. Other players probably went somewhere else. I don't know. I would imagine. And Patrik Laine boarded a flight this morning. There he is at the airport. I know someone that was on his flight and don't know what he was going to do. And it's okay. It's his business. But Patrik Laine was on a flight to Newark this morning, an early flight to Newark. So was he going to New Jersey? Was he going to New York and flew into Newark? Even though if you're going to New York, you probably end up going to LaGuardia or JFK. Was he actually connecting to go somewhere else where there wasn't a direct flight and had to connect through Newark? When is he coming back? I don't know, but there you have it. There's Patrik Laine, who was all smiles this morning at Pierre-Elliott Trudeau Airport. And I have to tell you, Laine is great with fans. He is absolutely great. He's often in a very, very good mood. He's very accommodating for pictures, autographs, a brief chat, and all that stuff. So he's very, very good. I want to show you who Laine has played with, because Alexandre Cassar-Harvey of TVA Sports joined me on my show a couple of weeks ago En Français, and he came prepared, and I asked him, I said, I want to explore all avenues. Who has Laine played with? Who hasn't he played with? So let's take a look at the chart of who he's played with. There you have it. The forwards that have been most utilized with Laine since he arrived in Montreal at 5v5. He's played the most with Alex Newhook, about 420 minutes. Second most with Kirby Dach, 275 minutes. 96 minutes with Jake Evans, 63 minutes with Josh Anderson, 58 minutes with Juraj Slafkovsky, and 53 minutes with Joshua Roy. With the exception of Newhook and Slafkovsky, before Newhook went down with that injury, Newhook was playing on a second line. Mind you, last year he was probably playing second line, third line. Slafkovsky is the only guy really who over the last 3 years has played a lot of first line. He played once again 58 minutes with him. Talk to me about what you see here. The players he's been used with mostly, and what that would dictate to you.
So the thing with Laine is, I think it's obvious to anybody who follows the game closely, is that he's not a very good defensive player. And by that, I mean, he's not very good when the other team has the puck, and he's not very good when his team has the puck but is far from the opposing net, right? Like, he has one of the best shots of maybe anybody in the league. He knows how to use it. He knows the places that he needs to go to get it off. But it's a matter of his team having the puck and having it in the offensive zone or off the rush, right? So with players like these, they're a big conundrum for coaches, because generally speaking, these offensive opportunities, whether it's on the power play, whether it is, playing with the best players, they're seen as rewards, right? They're not seen as, oh, we put you there, and then even if you're not playing well, the other 150 feet of the ice, we're still going to leave you there. So back when he was in Winnipeg, I think as a younger player with fewer injuries and the momentum that came with being a second overall pick, he often found himself with top six players in the top six and on top power play. And obviously in Montreal, since he's arrived, he's had some really good results in the power play, but at 5-on-5, he's played mostly with middle six to bottom six players. And what I would say is, sure, like if you look at whether the shot differential, the goal differential, they're not very good. But at the same time, I wouldn't necessarily expect them to be very good. And I don't think they would have been that much better a few years ago in Winnipeg if you were playing with the Checkers, right? So, for instance, this season, he started with, I think it was Jake Evans and Josh Anderson, right? For me, that's just a complete waste of time on everybody's part, because not only are you taking away Laine's ability to get the puck and shoot it because his teammates are not playmakers, but also you're taking away the defensive upside that Evans and Anderson have. So you're basically having such a disconnected unit on the ice that if you look at the results, obviously they only played a few games together, but they were catastrophically bad in terms of being.
But if I can, I would imagine the thought process is you have a player who defensively is less responsible than the other two. The other two are very responsible defensive players, and you're saying, how can I insulate this guy? How can I cover for his lack of, obviously, defensive awareness? And so what do? I'm going to put him with two very responsible defensive players so that if he doesn't pull his weight, I know that they'll compensate. That's the thought process. Now, you're right. It didn't work out.
And it is a valid thought process except for two reasons. First of all, is that when you play defense against good NHL teams, it's a 5-man unit. And as soon as there's one guy who's sort of, not on the program or off doing his own thing, the four others, that structure breaks down, because now all of a sudden we're not sure who's supposed to do what. And the second thing is, which I think is an even bigger problem with someone like Laine, is that for him to be an effective player at 5-on-5, you have to play him not only with guys who can defend, but guys who can move the puck and get him the puck. And Evans and Anderson are not that. So I, for example, with the team as it is right now, I'd be curious to try him a little bit with Danault. Because Danault, obviously, great at winning faceoffs, great at defending, but he's also really underrated in terms of his playmaking and his ability to set up his teammates. And I think he's much better in that regard than Evans or Anderson. So,
but that would depend. If you use Danault on a shutdown line, then Patrik Laine would be going up against very, very good players on the other line. Now, if you decide to go strength against strength and use the Suzuki line, then all of a sudden, Danault no longer is going up against the other team's best lines. Then I understand it. But if I can, the second part of the thought process, where obviously the second you think Patrik Laine, you think you have to play him with offensive players. I get that. But if you're playing strength against strength, that's one of the reasons why you probably don't use him. But now, part of that thought process that I also understand is if you end up putting him on a quote unquote fourth line, you're probably saying, okay, he's going to go up against fourth line players. He should be better than fourth line players on the other team. And if you put him on a fourth line, chances are he's going up against a third pairing on defense. He should be able to get the better of a third pairing defenseman. So I understand, once again, the thought process, even though the automatic for a lot of people is to say, put him with offensive players. I understand at least trying him with defensive players. I get it.
The other solution, let's say, is if the Canadiens are in a situation where they're able to have access to Michael Hage or Zorofsky for the playoffs. So obviously, especially for Zorofsky, the chances are not high, but they're not zero either. But if you can construct a fourth line that's more youth, speed, and skill, then Laine would be a better fit perhaps on that line if they can really shelter them and play them in favorable situations. You know, we've seen good teams in the past with an offensive fourth line. And that's another option where, you know, maybe the way that the team is constructed right now, it's hard to find a spot for Laine, but we never know what's going to change from now to April. And perhaps there's going to be a situation where it actually does make sense.
In the past, there have been a lot of teams that were constructed and built on two offensive lines, a third line being a shutdown line, a fourth line being a checking energy line. Teams have won Stanley Cups that way. Things have kind of changed a little bit. Mind you, the Florida Panthers were built that way. All right. Two offensive lines, a shutdown line, and an energy line. Take a look at Greer on the fourth line and the job that he did. Nosek, of course, in previous years. And having said that, it all depends on what the coach's philosophy is, right? But if he decides to put offensive lines and he decides to put four lines that can skate, four lines that can play, my next question is, knowing at the pace the Canadiens play at, can Laine keep up? Is his pace an issue for you?
His pace is less of an issue if Montreal has the puck. Because the thing with Laine is, yes, he's not the fastest skater and he looks nonchalant out there. But that also makes him incredibly dangerous as a change of speed. And I think, you know, even though most of the attention is to his shot, I think he's actually a very good stick handler and passer. He's got really good hands. And the thing is if you put him with other offensive players who can kind of read what he's thinking and go to the right places, they're incredibly difficult to defend because Laine is going to be really good at slowing things down and then springing a teammate with speed. Whereas, you know, if you look at the way Montreal plays, like guys like Evans or Gallagher or Anderson, they tend to play at one speed, which is, you know, as fast as they can go. And when they try to slow it down, they're way less effective. So the thing is, you know, Laine unlocks a lot of different opportunities. So again, you know, we're talking about very specific scenarios, and it's not going to be sort of a plug and play situation, but he does bring something that is entirely unique that Montreal is not going to be able to get on the open market right now. And that can certainly help. I mean, you know, one of the misconceptions about how to build a team to win is that, you know, you have to have grit and you have to play good defense and you have to be, you know, good at checking, which again is true. I'm not, you know, saying that it's not true, but think about it this way. If the game is tied, you want to play with your best foot forward, right? Whatever it is that, you know, if you defend really well, you do that. If you attack really well, you do that. If, you know, you're going the power play, then you try to draw penalties. If you're leading by one, then you try to stick with that recipe as best as you can, right? You're not going to change the way that you play dramatically when you're up by one. When you're down by one, that's when it's time to change. So whatever it is that you're doing that caused you to trail the game, you might want to offer something different to your opponents. And that's where a guy like Laine comes in, because whether it is, you know, you're trailing the game, you get a power play, or you're trailing the game and you get a good matchup, or, you know, you're trailing very late in the game, you pull the goalie with 3.5 minutes left, you need to get multiple lines out there to not overuse the Suzuki unit. Then Laine becomes incredibly valuable because, again, like in those situations, he offers something that whether it's Evans, Anderson, Gallagher, they just simply cannot give you.
The Sick Podcast is brought to you in part by Energy Transportation Group, a leading asset-light 3PL that's driven to be different from cross-border freight between Canada, USA, and Mexico to coast shipping in both Canada and the United States. Energy moves it all. They're fast, reliable, and powered by tech that delivers smarter logistics. If you need a real partner in transportation, contact the team at sick@shipenergy.com and see how Energy Transportation Group is changing the freight game. Also, I want to talk to you about Playground. Winning Wednesday is the ultimate midweek experience for players age 50 and up. Start your day with a $5 breakfast as of 7 a.m. Take your shot at winning your age in cash with hourly draws until 10 p.m. And don't forget to claim your free play, also available until 10 p.m. Wednesdays were made for winning only at Playground. Okay. For big games, I have to talk to you about that because there's a big game coming up for Team Canada, the men's team. And they're going to play on Thursday versus the Czechs, and on Friday versus Switzerland, and on Sunday versus France. By the way, the women played earlier today. We haven't talked to you about it yet because they lost 5-0. Marie-Philippe Poulain wasn't there, but they've now lost their last 7 games versus Team USA. Ugh, it's going to be tough. For big games, you want the best beers on your team, whether it's Bittt Tibi IPA with its bold flavor, Bittt Tibi Lager with its exceptional smoothness, or Bittt Tibi Ultra Lager, which is ultra light and ultra refreshing. They always have a place on your team. Bittt Tibi, brewed for special occasions, and please drink responsibly. All right, okay. Let's do this. We talked about Patrik Laine. Why don't we bring up his hockey DB? All right, okay. We all know his story. Drafted 2nd overall. That's the year of the Patrik Laine, of the Austin Matthews draft, pardon me. And 2016, Austin Matthews went number 1 to Toronto. 36 goals in his rookie season, 44 in his second, 30 in his third, 28 in 68 games in his fourth. And then that was it for his time with the Winnipeg Jets. He moves on to Columbus, scores 10 in 45, 26 in 56, 22 in 55, 6 in 18. And with the Montreal Canadiens last year, 20 in 52. Still a good season. Obviously far from 44 and 36. That 22 and 52, 15 of those 20 goals came on the power play. Jack, some people think he's done. He can't be done at age 27 if he still has a passion for the game, knowing how good he's been his entire career. You take a look at his hockey DB, and what do you see?
Well, what I see is incomplete information because as you mentioned in that 22 goal season, 15 were on the power play. And actually, I did a video study on Laine I think 4 years ago for my newsletter. And what I found was, like many other elite NHL scorers, he does most of his scoring in just a few different ways. So for Laine, that is from the left dot on the power play on a one-timer. It is off the rush, 5-on-5, whether it's an odd-man rush, whether it's a counterattack. So, unstructured situations where he doesn't have to outskate people necessarily. And then 5-on-5, long cycle plays where he has time to find a soft spot in coverage high in the zone. So the thing with these kind of players is if you put them in a situation where, for whatever reason, whether it's their line mates, whether it's the system, if they don't have access to those opportunities, their goal totals drop dramatically without them necessarily being that much worse of a player. So if Laine goes from 40 goals down to 15 goals, it doesn't mean that he's only a third as good as he was before, because maybe that just meant that you took away his power play time or you put him with the wrong guys at 5-on-5. So, the production is very volatile. So is he done as an NHLer at age 27? I don't believe so, because he can either be incredibly useless or quite useful, but it's really up to you to find how you use him. And it's not true with a lot of the other bottom 6 players in the league, which is why I think the league skews a certain way when it comes to depth players, right? These are guys who skate well, who check well, who give a good effort, who are easy to coach. But when you look at sort of absolute value in terms of what they can create for their teams, Laine is comfortably in that conversation.
Fantastic stuff. All right, okay. So now we have other stats. Let's take a look at Patrik Laine with the players that he's played with at 5v5 and what the differentials are. All right. Goals for and against with Laine at 5v5 when two players are on the ice, him and another player. When he's on the ice with Newhook, 16 goals for, 22 against. That combination doesn't work. -6. With Doc, 10-4, 12 against. That combination doesn't work. -2. With Evans, 0-4, 5 against. That combination doesn't work. -5. With Anderson, 0-4, 1 against. That combination doesn't work. -1. With Slafkovsky, 1-4, 2 against. That combination doesn't work. -1. With Joshua Roy, 3-4, 5 against. That combination doesn't work. -2. Obviously, you want to have a combination that has a positive out of it, Jack. So there's different options. And before we get to those different options again, you see this, and it just basically confirms what you said, right? He's not a great defensive player. What else do you see?
So, like I'm not the biggest math fan out there. You know, I do some math because of what I do for a living, but I just think this is actually more of a math problem in the sense that mentally we have an expectation that, like, if you break even in terms of goals, a line works. And then if you don't break even, a line doesn't work, right? Like, that's kind of the unspoken mathematical assumption that we have. But the thing that's important to know is that expectation doesn't hold for every single line across the team, because you need your first line to outscore the other team, right? Because they play against a mix of people. But on the flip side, if your fourth line gets outscored by a little bit, it's actually not that big a deal. In fact, if you look across the league, not that many teams have fourth lines that are significantly outscoring the other team. And it makes total sense, because if your fourth line is so good, then why aren't you playing them as your third line, right? Why aren't you moving your players up? So if you look at, let's say, 3 goals for and 5 goals against with Joshua Roy, right? Joshua Roy for me is like a fringe fourth line player, but he has offensive skills. So he's not the best skater, not the best checker, but has a good shot, can make plays. So over the course of a season, if Patrik Laine and Josh Roy play together, let's say for 82 games, and I don't know, they get 45% of the goals, that for me is fine. For out of a fourth line, that's actually a pretty decent situation, assuming that you have your top line of Suzuki, Caulfield with Texier or Slafkovsky, whoever, and they're getting 55 or 60% of the goals because they play more, right? So what you want to do is you want your top lines to play a lot and to outscore people by a lot. And then all you want from your fourth line is you want them to more or less break even if they can, but if they can't, it's actually not that big a deal. And what's, again, not represented in those numbers is if you're letting Patrik Laine get outscored 2 goals per every, let's say, 10 games at 5-on-5, he's giving you all that back and more on the power play.
Speaking of which, let's bring up the power play. And we have a chart for that as well. The forwards, or the forwards he's been most used with on the power play since he's been a Montreal Canadien. Nick Suzuki, 153 minutes. Juraj Slafkovsky, 150 minutes. Cole Caulfield, 148 minutes. Kirby Dach, 13 minutes. Brendan Gallagher, 13 minutes. Ivan Demidov, 12 minutes. So, you see this. Talk to me about the NHL the way it is today compared to the way it used to be. Could teams afford to have a player in their lineup that doesn't play 5v5 or doesn't play a lot and is just used as a power play specialist? How does that compare to previous years?
Well, I would actually say it's tougher now than it was before, just because of how much faster the game has gotten in the past, let's say 20 years, where you definitely need all 4 lines, right? You don't need the fourth line to play a lot, but you need them to play, 10 minutes a game, right? Not 0 minutes. You need your third pair to play, let's say, 15 minutes a game. Like I used to watch some of the old Montreal Canadiens games from the 70s back when they were winning Stanley Cups, and you would have guys who literally would not see a single shift. Right, you would have maybe like a fifth defenseman, like a Bill Nyrup, who would sit for entire periods, or Brian Englund, right? Or you would have a guy like Pierre LaRouche, who, like you mentioned, he was a power play specialist. Or when the Habs were winning cups, he wasn't getting used all that much 5-on-5. Actually, those kind of players, there's not as many of them because everybody has to be at least somewhat functional at 5-on-5, which again brings us back to the whole point of our conversation, which is it is challenging. I'm not saying it's easy to fit Laine in. It is challenging. If we had the same roster that the Canadiens had in the 70s with that sort of style of play, sit Laine on the bench for 45 minutes, bring him out for a power play, maybe he scores, sit him back down, and then the game's over, right? But we certainly can't do that anymore.
Ever since so Slafkovsky's been a line mate of Suzuki and Caulfield's, obviously, since he broke into the league. There was a couple of games where he wasn't a couple of years ago. I think he started the season with Kirby Dach, who got hurt the second game of the season. And then last year he was back with them. Of course, Slafkovsky was. And this year he started with them. And then all of a sudden at one point, they probably tried to change things up a little bit. So Slafkovsky went down to the quote unquote second line, and Zachary Bolduc went up, and then Bolduc went back down in the lineup, and Slafkovsky went back up to the first line. And then I think Bolduc went back up, Slafkovsky went back down, and then Bolduc went back down, Texier went back up, and then Bolduc went back up, Texier went back down, and then Kirby Dach went up, and excuse me. And I think a lot of people think that if Slafkovsky is going to stay with Kapanen and Demidov, that the Canadiens don't have a consistent, everyday, every night winger for Suzuki and Caulfield. Can Laine be that guy? And before you answer that question, if I would have told you the night the Canadiens acquired Patrik Laine from Columbus and a second-round pick in return from Jordan Harris, and there was so much excitement in Montreal from so many people, if I would have told you that night, he'll be a Montreal Canadien for a year and a half, 2 years, and during that time, he's not going to play with Caulfield and Suzuki, you would have thought what? What would you have said?
I would have understood, given that, first of all, these two players are righties, okay? So, and it's a little bit unusual at the NHL level to have three forwards on a line who are all righties, because there's twice as many lefties as righties on the line.
They have that with Kirby Dach right now.
Sure. Yeah. So we're already sort of in this unusual situation. The second is a lot of what Laine likes to do interferes with what Caulfield naturally likes to do. So I talk about a guy who loves to score one-timers from the left dot, who loves to get open off the rush, maybe cheat for offense a little bit. That's what Caulfield does, right? And Caulfield is doing it at a 40-goal pace right now. So what that means is one of them is going to have to change the way that they play. Does that mean that Laine has to move over to the right side, be more of a passer? Perhaps, even though
we saw it when Laine was on the power play with Caulfield. Laine took over Caulfield's office, which is around the left faceoff circle. Caulfield had to go sometimes to the right point or sometimes to the half wall on the other side, and he wasn't as effective on the power play. It wasn't him who was scoring the goals at that point.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why. So, if you're asking me, can he maybe play with Slafkovsky and Suzuki? I think that's a more functional line in terms of the synergy between the players.
All right. Okay. I want to get back to Danault. You brought up his name. You talked about players that he possibly could play with, or that it's worth a shot trying. Talk to me about why Danault and who else you could see on that line.
So in many ways, Danault is the exact opposite of Laine, in the sense that if you look at his stats, let's say on Hockey DB or Elite Prospects, it doesn't jump off the page, right? Like, it's a guy who gets like 40, 45 points a season. And you're thinking, well, this guy is more of a shutdown player, doesn't score. But actually, when you only look at his 5-on-5 production, which is actually all of his production, because he never plays on the power play, it's highly respectable versus a lot of other big names across the league. So, as much as Laine's numbers are inflated because he plays a lot and he scores a lot on the power play, Danault is the opposite. He doesn't play power play. He's actually quite a good point getter at 5-on-5, and we don't really realize that about him.
So he plays with Danault 5-on-5. He plays left side.
Depending on who the other winger is, I think there could be a fit with Zach Bolduc, just because Bolduc is a lefty, so that means that they both like to be on their offside, so that works. Bolduc is a big body, can go to the net, can forecheck, can be physical in a way that obviously Laine isn't, and I think in that line, I think Laine actually has somebody to pass to, and Bolduc is a very good shooter. So, again, as a high-end scorer, Laine has a lot of those instincts of saying, okay, well, I like the puck a certain way in a certain situation, and if I see Zach Bolduc on the other side of the ice in those situations, I can get him the puck. And again, like Laine's stick handling and his passing, I find are underrated. He's not just a shooter; he has amazing hands, and as a playmaker for another guy who can finish, that could work as well.
So, if you're the coach, you would give this a shot before you would decide what you would do with Patrik Laine.
I would give this a shot. So that allows you also to keep, whether it is Doc or Texier with Suzuki and Caulfield, you can keep Slafkovsky with Demidov and Kapanen, and then you have a margin of error. If somebody else gets injured, you can sort of sort things out. But I would definitely try some sort of a variation on that line, whether it is with Danault and Bolduc, or Danault with maybe Texier if Doc stays up with the first line, or maybe when Newhook comes back, maybe try that again. But I think Danault is that one player who wasn't here before that can maybe get Patrik Laine going in terms of how they could complement each other.
Amazing stuff, Jack. And we're going to continue in just a second, not before I talk to you all about the Slush Buster, the new innovative snow brush designed to tackle winter's mess with ease. And Lord knows that there was a lot of snow tonight, and there's going to be a lot of slush even tomorrow. From heavy slush to stubborn ice, the Slush Buster clears it all quickly, keeping your car clean and your hands dry. Smarter, stronger, and built for Canadian winters. Use code TONY15 for 15% off your order, only available for the first 500 purchases. Also, if you want to get in on the action, go all the way with Betway and get a deposit matchup bonus up to $300 on your first deposit. Scan the QR code on the screen or click on the link in the details section to create an account. Redeem your welcome offer. Offers only available for new customers. Terms and conditions apply. Offers not available in Ontario. Must be 18 years of age and older. And please, once again, play responsibly. Thank you very much for that. Jack, who's the ideal winger after saying all of this? Who's the ideal winger for Caulfield and Suzuki?
Long term, I think Slafkovsky. I mean, what they've shown together already is, for me, evidence that this is going to be an elite NHL first line once all of these players, reach maturity. Well, Slafkovsky especially. And I think Montreal has enough sort of in its system to build out a good second line after that. So for me, it's not really much of a discussion.
All right. Perfect. So some people are saying, yeah, but he's got such great chemistry with Kapanen and Demidov. And ever since he's been on that line, he's been the leader. He's been carrying the line. You believe that step forward that Slafkovsky took in his game is actually going to serve him even better when he goes back up with Caulfield and Suzuki, because before he was reluctant to drive the play, before he was reluctant to carry the puck. Now, instead, going forward, if he has another chance with those guys, he's going to do it with so much more confidence because he's done it with Demidov and Kapanen, and it's worked. So you believe he's going to be better off for it.
Exactly. And if, what we're seeing from Slafkovsky, I would much rather him play 18 minutes a game rather than 16, right? Or whatever that number is. I would want him to play more with better players on the top line. And then we can figure out some solutions to backfill behind him.
Amazing stuff. Okay. We got some bad news. For those who planned on watching, of course, the skills competition and the AHL All-Star game, there is going to be a member of the Montreal Canadiens organization who will not participate, and announced earlier today from the Laval Rocket. Jacob Fowler has an upper body injury and will not be able to participate nor in the skills competition nor in the AHL All-Star game. Final word on Jacob Fowler in ending, because Jeff Gordon told Eric Engels, they had a chance to sit down last week, it's Eric's piece in Sportsnet, that seeing as the goaltending situation is stabilized, and obviously it needs to continue to be stable. If it is, Jeff Gordon doesn't anticipate anything happening with the goaltenders. He's comfortable with finishing the season with Montembeault and Dobesh, battling it out, and Jacob Fowler continuing his development at the American Hockey League level. You were a coach. You were an assistant coach of the Toronto Marlies at the American Hockey League level. I know every player is different, and I know it all depends on the position too, that probably development differs as well. But in your opinion, can you give me an example of a goaltender, I'm putting you on the spot here, but a goaltender who did the adequate time of development at the American Hockey League level, maybe one that didn't, what you think would be adequate development for a guy like Jacob Fowler?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because at the AHL level, the game is a little bit less structured. It's a little bit more chaotic. Obviously, the level of defensive play is not as strong. Sometimes you get these weird plays that you don't get in the NHL. But certainly, it's important to get a season and a half, 2 seasons, maybe even 3 seasons under your belt to have a good history of understanding that, how your body reacts in a pro schedule, which, Fowler would not be as familiar with because, he grew up playing college. Adjusting to back-to-backs, adjusting in situations where that you're going to get the nod no matter what, instead of living sort of in uncertainty that, with every bad start, you're going to lose your job. When I was with the Marlies, we had Joseph Woll, who was our sort of goalie of the future. He didn't always put up the best numbers. He had his struggles. And unfortunately, with injuries, I think have held him back a little bit now with the Leafs.
3 goalies at Toronto: Wall, yeah, Stolarz, and Hildeby. And the word on the street is, even though Stolarz is under contract for the next couple of years, if they can move him, he's the guy they'd want to move. You know what? I like Hildeby a lot.
Hildeby's big. He's like 6'6".
That's I like those guys. What can I tell you?
So those guys, like those bigger guys, it can take a while for them to grow into their bodies, build some muscle, learn the reads. Jacob Markstrom is a player who is a goalie who's sort of on the downward swing now, but it took him a while to go from an early pick for Florida to Vancouver, struggling, becoming a starter there, doing really well in Calgary. You don't want to burn a guy out at 21, 22 when that, generally speaking, now goalies mature a little bit later.
Yeah. Ben Bishop. There was another big guy, right? He was 6'7", drafted by the St. Louis Blues.
Yeah. I mean, when he came into the league, he was sort of seen as a bit of a freak show, like almost too tall, right? And went from Ottawa to Tampa in sort of a not a very highly sort of publicized trade, and then takes over the starting job there, paves the way for a lot of these bigger goalies. But again, like those guys, sometimes they need time, right? Like needs a little bit more time. Wall has to get healthy. Stolarz is playing good hockey, and I think he can help a lot of teams. But from a rebuilding point of view, I think it's the obvious choice to make.
Bishop's best moments, I think, came 5, 6, and 7 years into his National Hockey League career with the Tampa Bay Lightning, 3 seasons in a row, 37 wins, 40 wins, 35 wins. And then probably 4 seasons after that, he had seasons of 26 and 27 wins with the Dallas Stars. But drafted by the St. Louis Blues, a couple of years in St. Louis, a cup of coffee in Ottawa for a couple of seasons in Ottawa. And then 5 seasons in Tampa, a season in Los Angeles, 3 seasons in Dallas, and also played a game in the AHL back in 2021-2022 with the Texas Stars of the American Hockey League. So our conclusion, you'd give Patrik Laine a shot on a line with Phil Deneau and possibly Zach Bolduc.
Yeah, let's give him 3 to 5 games and see what happens.
3 to 5 games, they could do that. Because once again, the Canadiens are back at it after the Olympic break. On the 26th, on the Thursday, they host the Islanders. On the 28th, of February, they host Ovechkin and the Capitals. And then on the 3rd of March, they're in San Jose versus the Sharks. And then a couple of days later, on the 6th of March, is NHL trade deadline day. The Canadiens will be in Anaheim that night, but earlier in the day is the deadline for the NHL trade deadline. So you would give, based on this, Patrik Laine 3 games after the Olympic break. You would give him the Islanders at home, you'd give him the Capitals at home in Montreal, and you'd give him the game in San Jose, and probably decide after that game on the 3rd of March. Is that correct?
Yeah. So whether it is with Bolduc or maybe Texier, depending on what the top line looks like, if Laine can't score against the Islanders, and he can't score against San Jose, and he can't score on the power play in either of those, in any of those games, then that'll be tough. But I think he's going to find a way.
Jack, thank you so much for this. Your first time on the Sick Podcast in English. I know you're going to be a big hit. Amazing content as usual. Former assistant coach of the Toronto Marlies in the American Hockey League. Former development coach in the Maple Leafs organization. Worked with Kyle Dubas, worked with Sheldon Keefe, among others, and still today continues to help hockey players with their development, not only here in North America, but hockey players from Europe as well. Jack, amazing stuff. Tomorrow on the Sick Podcast, I will take a look at Team Canada, the men's team, Team USA, Team Sweden, Team Finland, and I want to do it with you. So make sure you got some time available in your schedule, Jack. I'm going to bring you back for a second night in a row because you hit this one out of the park, baby.
Yeah, man. Going back to back. Let's do it.
Let's do it tomorrow. Thank you, Jack Han. Appreciate it. Care. All right, there you have it. Special thanks to all of our sponsors. Jack Han, of course, is brought to you once again by Souvlaki Authentique. I want to thank the Slush Buster. I want to thank Betway. I want to thank Geloso Beverage Group and Bittt Tibi. I want to thank Playground, and I want to thank Energy Transportation Group. If you like the podcast tonight, leave us a 5-star review. It's our way of feeling the love. Like, subscribe, tell all your friends about it, and let's make this sick community get even bigger and even sicker. Thanks for watching the Sick Podcast. Tomorrow, we talk Olympics, and we break down those 4 teams, and we'll tell you who has the best chance at 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th right here, the Sick Podcast. I'm Marinaro.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts. The Sick Podcast is brought to you by Energy Transportation Group, driven to be different. Tibi. Embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination.